Steve Darrow says, tell us about your family dynamic growing up, specifically with your siblings. As you've already told us about your dad, were you the middle child? Who was the brat? Who was mom's favorite? Who was your favorite? Who got in the most trouble? That sort of thing. Great question. Let's see. I meant to pull more of these. I pulled one. This is my mom. This is the way my mom looked when my dad met her. So this would be about, I want to say 2-3 years before I was born. And that's BOAC uniform there. See if I can scale this thing a little bit. There we go. She did all the commercials for BOAC. That's pretty good. And I want to say that's a Stratoliner in the background, which is basically it's basically a B-17 that turned into a passenger plane. But she was a stewardess on the last generations of piston-powered airplanes, and twice they lost engines, and twice they were going to ditch in the ocean, and twice she was, wanted accommodations for bravery and courage and stuff. They were on a flight on a BOAC Stratoliner like that one. And they were going from New York to London, and they lost an engine, and then that's why you had 4 engines. Okay. Then they lost another engine, and that was serious. And then they lost a third engine, and they couldn't hold altitude on 3 engines. They were still flying, but they couldn't hold altitude. So they start diverting to Gander, Greenland, and there was a Pan Am flight about 20 minutes ahead on that Atlantic route, and the Pan Am flight circled back, and the pilot on the BOAC flight said, outside our right wing is a Pan Am flight, and they're going to stay with us the whole way, and they said they're praying for us, and all of that. And I thought that was just so cool. So they're getting ready to ditch in the ocean, and she's trying to figure out what to do with these kids because the kids are getting scared. A couple kids traveling on the plane without without their parents on board. And she basically had the idea to go up and get them pads of paper, and told them it was very, very important that they write down everything that happens in order, detailed notes about everything that happens in order. Wow, how about that? I'm looking for pictures, and I just found one I hadn't seen, and I don't know if I've ever seen this picture. I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so what she did by doing that was she basically got the kids thinking about doing something, got their minds going and not just sitting there being afraid, and it was real smart. And then the other thing she did when they were getting ready to ditch in the ocean was she went in the back and she took a bunch of these thermos bottles, water bottles, and filled them full of either brandy or whiskey or whatever was back there. And thought that would help keep people warm out there. And when they got the engine restarted, the second one restarted, and they started heading to Gander. It looks like they were going to make it. Just before they landed, one of the stewards realized what she'd done, and I don't think she asked permission for it. And she said, "Jesus, Edith, you got to go back. How do you think it's going to look if we come out of this airplane, smelling of alcohol with booze in our things?" But anyway, yeah, I'm just kind of screwing around trying to find all these pictures from the past. Here's a picture of my mom as I remember her. This was taken during the hotel days. If it'll hang on, sorry. Let me just bail on. Yes, there we go. So this is how I remember my mom looking growing up. And she was just a fashion plate. And she grew up in Egypt. She was there during the Suez Crisis with my grandfather. They were trapped in a building when all of the when the Muslims started to riot, and they wanted to just kill every Englishman they could find. And my grandfather was in Royal Naval Intelligence, and he was in this kind of like a commissary sort of thing. And there's a literal mob of people on the street. And so they barricade the door, and they, the people are just, they're banging the door down to come in and take their heads off. And my grandfather called his friend at the military barracks and said, "You got to come save us." And he says, "Alf, I can't. I'm not allowed to send anybody out unless British property is being destroyed." So my grandfather starts getting a bunch of these giant, I don't know what they were, they're bathtubs or something, it was big containers of water. And he starts boiling this water, starts carting it up to the roof because he figures they're going to have to make a last stand on the roof. My mom was probably 12 or something. And he's getting ready to pour this boiling water down the stairs. And then they smashed the window to come in. And then my dad called the guy back and said, "Well, British property has now been damaged. They've smashed the commissary window." And so the British troops arrived, and if they hadn't, I wouldn't be here. So that was something. My mom always said the person that she got, who she got compared to the most was, oh my gosh, what's her name? Hang on. She always said that this is the person who's, just completely got stopped for, I've forgotten her name. Hang on. I can just mention it, and then everybody will tell me, but that's no fun. What's her name? Yvonne DiCarlo. Is that right? Yes. Yvonne DiCarlo. She said she got stopped for Yvonne DiCarlo all the time, who was in the Munsters. This is Yvonne DiCarlo. You may remember her as Mrs. Munster. Let's see. I see it in the Munsters sometimes. So that got to be a very popular show. Yeah, this kind of picture, I can see a similarity there. So Yvonne DiCarlo again. They look a bit alike there. Yeah, Lily Munster. Anyway, yeah, so that's my mom. I have found a picture, just going through my photos, and I found a picture I had not seen. I mean, obviously I saw it somewhere because it's in my photos, but I do not remember seeing this before. Get some of these guys away here. Hang on a second. It's us when we were very young, and it's taken in America. Those are the things that I know. Other than that, I'm really quite shocked to see it. So hang on a second. And I'll get to that question about all the sibs and all that stuff. So this was on the desk here. Let's try this one. This is taken in the United States probably before, oh, there you go, October 62. There we go. So that's my mom on the left. My brother Steve was a year younger than me, and then my dad. And that's almost certainly taken at my Aunt Marty's in Pennsylvania, up in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. So we would come back and visit once a year. It was always really one of my favorite parts of the year, and come to see my Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock. But that's not really very representative of me because, to be honest with you, most of the pictures of me as a kid are on the beach. So let me just let you look at that little piece of silliness for a minute, and I'm going to see if I can find some others here. I should have probably pulled these before, but that would ruin the integrity of the show, and I just wasn't willing to do that. So, so my dad is just about to move, or had just moved to to Bermuda. So he's just starting out as the general manager of the hotel and starting to come along in his career. It's really before he got to the top of his career, but we've just left the hotel in New York. My dad worked at the Roosevelt Hotel as a food and beverage manager when I was born. And then, so this would be probably about a year or two after moving to Bermuda, something like that. Yeah, I can tell you October 62 was, I was born in April of 59, so it's a little over 3 in that picture there, I guess. Come on now, I'm scrolling, don't want to skip past all this stuff. I just should pull all of these things into a thing. But that's really, I mean, that's America, you know. I mean, that's just the world I grew up in. That's the world of cap guns and stuff. There's a picture of my dad at 17. I can't believe that I'm descended from this guy. I mean, my dad at 17 is I think maybe the best looking man I've ever seen. I mean, he's just it's unbelievable. He put on a fair amount of weight after the war, and but before he did, when he was, I mean, it's just shocking. Okay, here's some planetarium pictures. I'll get back to those, I hope. Sorry about the delay, gang. I should have just done this earlier, but there's just these pictures, just so many of them. Let's see. Come on, Billy. I've got them all in one place. I just don't know where that one place is. I'm scrolling. But anyway, that was in Pennsylvania, and my Aunt Marty had a house there right on top of Plymouth Meeting Mall up on the Germantown Pike. And here we go. Here's some stuff. So here are two pictures of my mom taken later. I mentioned my grandfather, who was in the Royal Navy. He was awarded the Order of the British Empire for that. Here, some of these are interesting. So this is my granddad when he was a young man. Give me a second. Here it comes. Yep. That was my granddad as a young man. And here are two pictures of my mom. And to be honest with you, this is how I remember my mom, because I would probably be around 6 or 7 by this point. So she was at least, 5, 6, 7 years older than the ones in the BOAC thing. But whoops, I don't know why this rotates it around like that. I've never been able to figure that out. There we go. Why did it do that? Anyway, you get the idea. Let's see if I can flip that. If I can, I don't know how, unless it's here. Nope. Maybe it'll take the next one a little better. Hang on. Here's another one, same angle. But that's what I remember, what my mom looked like. And she's still with us, although she's with us and not with us, it's just Alzheimer's and stuff. She'll be 89 in September. But she hasn't, I really haven't spoken to my mom in at least 5, 6, 7 years now. It's a weird and strange and awful thing to be able to say something like that, You haven't spoken to my mom in 7, 8 years and she's still alive. It's brutal. It's better now than it was. Watching it happen was much worse than having it happen. And my Uncle Ted, on the other hand, who's just a year younger than her, is got a mind like a steel trap. He teaches engineering, and he has all of this stuff in his head. So he exercised his memory all the time, and my mom just didn't. So, scrolling back, this is the last picture. I told you it'd been a while since I'd spoken to my mom. This is the last time I spoke to my mom. I brought her from Florida out to Los Angeles for Christmas, I want to say 2013. So this was the last trip that we had together. Why is it going in upside down? I don't understand. Maybe there's just too much stuff in there. Hang on. Let's see if I can take some of these guys out. And on this trip, she was, in and out she was mostly just forgetful at this time, but very forgetful, and couldn't remember why we were there or stuff. And already the dementia started to happen, and that was not pleasant at all. She would be in our apartment. She'd just gotten there, and she'd get upset about something. And the next thing you know, she's got her bags packed, and she's going to walk out on the street and just walk home, which is a bit of a walk from Los Angeles. Let's see if it works a little better. Oops, hang on. And there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. You're just plain stuck with it. It's the way it is. Let's see if this one goes in a little better. I don't understand that. I never will understand that. Oh, that didn't work either. All right. But I've got some more stuff here. So let's see. Get rid of that. So try to find these Bermuda pictures, and I don't want to lose my place here. And 10,000 pictures of me. I think there was a period between like 1980 and whenever the iPhone came out, 2005. Here we go. Now we're on the gold mine, where there might have been 5 pictures taken of me during 30 years, and then now it's just 10,000 pictures. Okay, so here you go. These are pictures from Bermuda. This is the pool at my dad's hotel. Does that go straight in? It does. I grew up here. What wrong? Hey. Hang on. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day there at the pool at the hotel. It's the Carlton Beach Hotel in Bermuda, which my dad was the general manager of. And I don't guess the cursor's coming along. You see the guy with the red hat there. Above him is that kind of dome building up on the second floor. And right underneath the seam of that dome, really pretty much those 2 doors directly above the guy's hat, was my dad's office. So I could go up there all the time, kind of soaking wet and stuff, and just kind of check on it. And he had a dictaphone, which I thought was very cool. Never seen anything like that before, or heard anything like that before. I told you there's a picture of my dad that's just simply unbelievable. I still can't believe it. I really can't. I can't believe it. But this is my dad at 17. I got hit by a cosmic ray. Something went wrong. Because that's like movie star looks. I mean, I look like a chimp compared to him. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's just unbelievable. But my God, yeah, he does look a lot like James Dean. But I want to say he was 16, 17 then, and I never saw him looking like this. He'd put on not a tremendous amount of weight when I was born, but definitely there. Here's a picture I just love coming up. Hang on, get rid of this one. This one's really fun. I love this picture. Get ready, ladies. Here it comes. Yeah. That's me on the ladder in my bitchin' leopard Speedos. That's my brother Steve in front of me, and then my brother Evan with the cup. Steve's a year younger. Evan is 5 years younger. But that's really what I look like. I mean, I had a tan as deep as, I had a 2-inch deep tan, and I was just out in the water all the time. Just a healthy kid and running around swimming. Steve was always out snorkeling, and we just had a lot of fun. Yeah, that's me standing up in the front and center there with the Dad's Hotel in the background, all the flags of the different countries and so on. That was pretty cool. This picture was taken probably, I'm just going to say it's maybe another 6-7 years after that. This was back in Bermuda. And I'll just show a couple more of these, then I'll get to the family questions that you were asking. So we'll take that one off. This is one of my favorite pictures. I just love this picture. I just do. This was when we first moved to Key Biscayne, and this is when I was playing Little League Baseball. And I remember that exact pitch. I remember the photographer standing there, and I remember that pitch. I hit a triple off that pitch. It's the biggest hit I ever got in my entire life. I just like the look. I just like the determination on that picture. And not just the determination. I just miss Little League Baseball, and I miss the world that generated Little League Baseball. I miss it very much. I just think that was really cool. So this picture would have been 50 years ago? 50. Good Lord. That's really pretty shocking, honestly. So I'm just scrolling through pictures, and I just might as well just kind of go do it that way just to show you guys. We'll just do it that way to save us a little bit of time. So we'll say goodbye to that. That would be about 1970, I want to say, in Key Biscayne, Florida. Here's a picture of me from college days. This is about 1979, I guess. My friend Steve Stipp. And we were making my movie that I made in college called The Pigeonhole. And I was a crazy thin guy. Crazy thin. That's my friend Steve on the background there, and that's an Aeroflex 16mm camera. We rented the camera for 6 days. We called it Miracle Week, and we shot 3 films in 6 days. I don't think I slept more than 3-4 hours during those 6 days total, almost. Just deliriously tired. But I liked what we got with it. The movie I did was called The Pigeonhole, and it was great. And and at least the turtleneck is gone, says Steve Darrow. He's exactly right. So I'm probably 20 in that picture, something like that. So moving on. This is one of my favorite pictures of me coming up here. I like that picture too, obviously. This one I'm just very happy with. This is me after I'd gotten my pilot's license in gliders. And, damn it. This would be 1991. I soloed on the 4th of July. That's in the Mojave Desert. That's the same flight suit of me that I have in the Long Easy. Still got it. And I was probably 33, maybe, something like that. Nice little single-seat Grobe, 102. And it's like flying in a bathtub. It's tiny, tiny. And when you're up there in an airplane like that, you just don't feel the airplane at all. It's just like there's just no airplane there. It's just you and the mountains and everything else. And I really loved it there. And I loved the snow, and I loved the fact it was cold. I mean, I never was cold growing up. So that part of it was pretty cool. And I learned to fly there, and I just had a really good time. I was one of the guys working at the field, so I hung out with the tow pilots and my flight instructor. The 3 of us shared an apartment. We'd get there in the morning, and I would launch gliders, and then I would rake rocks. I think I still do have The Pigeonhole. It was an Academy Award nominee, believe it or not, Student Academy Award nominee, that movie I made. I made it for $6,000, and it beat a film by a guy named Dave Nutter, really wonderful guy. He's been a professional director out here all his life. He's done hundreds of things. And his film cost $60,000 or something, and we beat him because it was a comedy, and everybody else was doing kind of these serious things. Here's my dad as a much older man, not too long before he died, I guess. With my sister. There we go. Time marches on, kids. Yeah, my sister's. I just adore my sister. Yes, I was an Academy Award national finalist. The Student Academy Award competition takes films from around the country, and mine was from the southeastern United States, and I went to the finals with 3 or 4 other movies, and that's as far as I got, but I got that far. And it was a pretty clever film. It was about registering at college, and every department you went to was kind of like like a cartoon image of the department. So he goes to the English department, and the guy's kind of this sort of Dickensian kind of teacher, and here we go, and so on. And my sister is terrific. I just definitely closer to her than anybody else, and I just adore her. She's in Miami. She's a stylist. She's an amazing person. She's just a great woman, my mom. Here's another picture that pretty much sums up the horrible nightmare life I had prior to moving to Florida. Unbearable. That's taken in Bermuda at the hotel. And it's my brother Steve to my left, and a guy on my right is named Jonathan Farrow. And I'm obviously missing some teeth there. But look how blonde that hair is. That kind of tan, and that blonde hair is killer. It was really great. Here's another one from the same day, I'm sure. This is a little weird. I like this picture a lot. Let me take this other one off. This is us at the hotel, and the guy behind us there is, his name was Uncle Bob. And Uncle Bob was the recreation director at the hotel. So Uncle Bob was responsible for making sure that people always had fun things to do. And Uncle Bob was just a little bit creepy. I do like that picture. I like that pose. It's, now that I look at it, never really noticed it before. It's pretty nearly my, it's not real far from this. Yeah, definitely see the resemblance there. I like that look. I really do. I think there's just something cool about it. I just kind of like a lot of confidence there, I guess. So that was Bermuda. Let's see what else we got. It should just be pretty easy to go through this one time and put it together. Now I got to tell you, there's a guy who was really, kind of like my foster dad, because my dad was a hotel manager. Didn't get to see much of him, we kind of grew apart as we got older. But the guy who was pushing me on the dolly, my friend Steve Stipp, his father, Jerry Stipp, is the guy I talked about an awful lot in the early days of the show. He was the guy who started quit his job teaching at $21,000 a year, family of 4 kids and 2 adults, so 6. And he started Beta Analytic, and he just took a risk and went out there, and Beta Analytic does 94% of the world's carbon-14 dating. I worked for him for many years. He became a multimillionaire, moved to Arizona. He was really, in many ways, really was my father in a lot of ways. And as his health declined over the years, his heart was failing, and there was some talk about him getting a valve replacement, and they were going to use like a valve from a pig's heart or something. And the thing about Jerry was I used to just bust his chops all the time. Every time I wrote to him, I always wrote to him as if he was Sauron. I mean, this is way before The Lord of the Rings. I would just always write to him as, it was just like he's just, like he was just the Lord of Evil. But I remember he was talking about maybe getting a pig's heart valve put in. And I wrote him back and I said, look, why don't we just cut out the middleman here? Why don't we just save some time? Just stop messing around with putting all those pieces in there, and let's just I hate doing that, damn it. Let's just cut to the chase, Jerry. All right. I'm just going to leave that there. I don't care anymore. There we go. He was a great guy, really a great guy. And I love to do these kind of things with him. Let's why waste time constantly taking parts out of pigs for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Just get it over with. So I miss him very, very, very much. I miss him very much. He was a really, really good man and saved my bacon many, many times. Many, many, many times he saved my bacon, that guy. Old Jerry, he's a good man. I used to think that this was my favorite picture of me for the longest time. This was taken when I was a student, theater student, and I think it was my kind of my headshot from, so that'd be 40 years ago now. But I love this picture. Anyway, here it comes. Notice the Vulcan ears. Trying to catch that pose. I always thought I was a goofy looking guy. I really did. I felt good about myself when I was in Bermuda, but by the time I got to be a teenager, I was 6'1", 119 pounds. I was really, really thin, and I just thought I was kind of goofy looking. Looking back on it, I wasn't nearly as goofy looking as I thought I was. And if I'd had anything like the confidence I had today, I would have done things a lot differently back then. But anyway, a few years before that was taken, this is my high school graduation photo. There you go. That's not a bad picture. Although the hair. This hair that you have here, this magnificent hair that you've all become so accustomed to looking at and causes so much pleasure to so many people, is not possible in Florida. It's just not possible. You just can't have it. It's just too much humidity and all the rest of that stuff. But other than that, and it's on that print. What was the name of that company? It was like a company, something that did it's like they did every single high school picture in the world. Was it Bryn Allen? Is that the name of it? They just like, it was just a factory. You'd go down to the mall or whatever, and you just stand there, and then they'd snap the picture, and off you went, and craziness. Oh boy. Yeah, I might as well. I was talking earlier. Yeah, it was like it's Sears, that kind of thing. I was debating whether to show you this next one, but I might as well. In between the Little League baseball years and going to college and years, in fact, prior to graduating high school, I was working at the Miami Planetarium, and I had a flair for the Olin Mills, that's it. Flair for the dramatic. My friend Phil sent me this, I think. That's when I did my special console wizard thing. Like covered in blue paint and a wig, and they brought me in on a dolly on a throne, and was playing Pinball Wizard on the sound system, and just nuts. But this is my nephew. He's a good deal older now, by the way. But this is a good kid. This is my brother Steve's son. I'll show you a picture or two of Ashton. He's a great kid. Great kid. My brother Steve's pride and joy. This kid just absolutely loves him. My brother, to his undying credit, he was married 3 times, and when Ashton was born, he just got up every day at 5 o'clock. He had to be at work at 7. He had to get up early enough, get the kid fed and washed. Did it all by himself, 100% working full time, and I just admire that so much. I really do. And he turned out to be just a great kid. Not just cute kid, he's just smart as hell, and there's something about this kid. He's never had he's never had a bad day. I never saw him angry or upset or anything. He was always just a happy kid. I just really just worship the guy. I think he's a neat kid. I haven't seen him for several years now, and I'm looking forward to getting him back again. Let's see here. Scrolling. This one coming up is, I'm sure I showed this relatively recently. This one is the planetarium days. So that's me on the left, it's Scrawny Creature. The guy looking at the camera in the triple knit polyester pants is Doug Gagan, the best console operator I ever saw, although I do think I gave him a run for the money. Phil Trick is watching this either now live or recorded. He can be the final vote. The guy in the glasses in the center looking sideways is Phil Trick, who is just such an important part of my life. I've talked about him so many times, just gave me my entire moral compass. And everything else too. Really got me through my teen years. I don't know how I would have done it without him. I really don't. So here's a picture of me in Bermuda, and I am wearing my Warwick Academy tie. That's me in British schools. And it's not a really great clear picture. Here's the three kids. There's four of us. My sister Melanie was not born yet. She came, or if she was born, she was an infant. But that's on the stairs of my dad's hotel. I remember that staircase so well. I remember that location so well. It's me in the middle. I'm sorry, me on the left, Steve in the middle, and Evan on the right. And that's what it's like being the. That's what it's like being the manager's son. You know, we were just down there 3-4 nights a week, and it was just great. I don't know if I mentioned. I'm sure I've told this next story before. I'll tell it again, because I didn't actually realize I had a picture of it until not too long ago. So take a look at this. Now, there's a great story behind this picture. Not a great story, a tragic story, really. So there I am, junior Cub Scout in Bermuda. It's probably the last year or two before we moved back to Florida. And that's me in the center. Steve is to my left. Evan is in civilian clothes down below. I am holding my Pinewood Derby car. Evan is holding Steve's Pinewood Derby car. Steve is holding the first place Pinewood Derby trophy. And the look on my face is the look of somebody who just watched their balloon fly off into the air. I had put so much work into my car. I put so much work into it. I made it aerodynamic. I sanded it. I primed it. I painted it. I just put decals on it. I just put hours and hours and hours and hours into it. My brother Steve just took the red pine block, painted it red, and stuck the wheels on there, and he won, because aerodynamic drag is absolutely non-existent at 7 or 12 miles an hour, or whatever the Pinewood Derby does. So he just had his car had the most mass. That's why it won. A Pinewood Derby where scouts are made and destroyed. We had to build those cars. You get a kit, which consists of a block of I guess it was balsa, and then 4 wheels and some kind of carbon lubrication. What was that? And you could do whatever you wanted to the cars, and they'd put them on a ramp, and then they'd drop this sort of thing, and they'd just race them, and they'd finally race off. Anyway, I put so much work into that car, and Steve put none into his, and he got the trophy and I didn't, and that's at least an hour after the event, and you can see that I am still in a state of shock. That's the look on my face when I missed the Apollo 17 launch. That's exactly how I looked. Kind of, what? And that's our house back there, and that car is a Vickers Vauxhall, and the license plate is P4248. And our telephone number in Bermuda was 23902, and then they changed the code, and it became 80239. I don't know how I remember these things. I remember when I was living on Key Biscayne, my phone number was 305-361-1933. Here's one you don't see every day. I don't mean among me, I just mean among kids. It's not very common anymore. It gives you an idea of where so much of my, patriotism and stuff comes from. This was me at Christmas with my brother Steve. And yeah, my dad was an Army guy, but somehow he managed to be okay with me in the Marine dress uniform. So that's Steve dressed as a Mountie. He didn't know what that uniform meant. I had a pretty good idea about the Marine Corps. My uncle Rock was a Marine. I do remember the globe and anchor on that hat. I remember that so well. I remember that belt too. And I just, the idea today that I should just, there we go. Why didn't I do this earlier? The idea that, you just don't see kids wearing Marine Corps uniforms anymore. And it's a shame because it really does instill a kind of a fundamental patriotism in you. And I don't know. I always felt this way about the country, always. I just, it's just what I grew up with. I got a GI Joe right around that time, and that was Army. That made my dad a little happier. Then I got one with the Marine camouflage, and that made him a little less happy. So I've just hit I think I've just hit the gold mine here, where most of our pictures are. So I'm just going to run these, and then we'll get to some new questions here. Let's see, which ones have I not seen? This one is obviously 4 or 5 years later than the one of me on the stairs earlier, but we used to love to get our pictures taken there. So that's the same staircase as me in the background, Steve in front of me, Melanie on the rock, and Evan there. And I guess we went down and had our pictures taken once a year, something like that. It was a magical life, and I never got over it. I never did. I never took it for granted. I just loved it. Loved it. It was, who gets that kind of life? Who gets to grow up in a hotel? Here's a picture from the hotel, probably around the same time. And that's on the putting green out back. This is how I remember my mom and dad, to be honest with you. Seriously, this is how I remember them. That's me, and Steve's in the front. But that's actually how I will always remember my mom and dad. Just these elegant creatures just gliding around, and yeah, and the hotel at nighttime was lit up with colored lights, and every time I see colored lights on a building, I go right back to being 5 or whatever age I was then. My mom was also kind of a real big fashion plate, and so that meant we were fashion plates. So it'd be, I think that's, I don't know. Here's a picture. It looks like it's from Christmas. That hotel is not still around. The hotel was sold, became Wyndham Bermuda. It was Carlton Beach, then Sonesta Beach, then Wyndham. Was there for the longest time. I wanted to go back and see it so much, and then it was deserted for like 3 or 4 years. Deserted, and I thought, oh my God, deserted! I know every single nook and cranny of this hotel. I got to get back there. I'm gonna have so much fun just running around in there. I'll just sneak past the barbed wire or whatever and chicken wire and get in there. And by the time I checked on it last, it had been bulldozed out, and the whole peninsula that it's based on it's just empty now. I don't know. I still don't think there's anything on there. But you can see here I am being infected by the toxic masculinity of America's gun culture. Yes, it's a gun with had a scope attachment and a silencer attachment, all the things that make life worth living. Let's see. We're running out of stuff here, fortunately, because I'm probably getting a little old, but let's see if we can find anything else. This was fun days. It's back in the early days of the super secret meeting of the group of Hollywood conservatives. So this would be about 10 years ago now. but that's Bruce Boxleitner, John Voight, me, and Gary Sinise. And those were just tremendous days. And I found myself in like a picture like this, and I'm as amazed as anybody else. I couldn't believe I was there. I was really just like, Bill, just shut up, don't say anything. I'm surrounded by these kind of these legends, and Bruce Boxleitner is one of my favorite people. Really, really, really like him very much. He's a great guy. Very, very fond of him. Let's see. Oh, here's a picture from, I want to say about 10 years ago, of these known troublemakers. Yeah, look at those rascals. That was I think at that's gotta have been CPAC. Are you watching, Scotty? I think that was CPAC 2009. That's the first time I ever met Steve or Scott, and we just sat down and grabbed each other for breakfast and decided, hey, it would be fun to do a show on this new PJTV thing. What do you say? I said, sure. So that's what we did. Oh God, there's some really, really, really strange stuff here. It's not a great picture or anything, but this is from about 7-8 years ago. I don't know her name. I don't remember her name. The one I just put up, I like only because the guy in the picture is Armie Hammer, and Armie Hammer is one of the nicest people you could ever meet. And he's an actual, honest-to-God movie star. And I think that woman's name is Gigi or Netta. But this would be back around 7 years ago, something back when the organization was really moving. And Armie Hammer is just, he couldn't be a nicer guy. He played the Lone Ranger and has been in Man from U.N.C.L.E. and a bunch of things. And he's just a super, 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 super cool guy. And I know his wife well too. And they're just wonderful. I got a couple more. Let's see. This is me immediately after the picture of me on the camera. I want to say this is 2 years. No, this is before I went to college. This would be the year before I went to college. We were making movies in Miami. Oh God, this is embarrassing. Yeah, that's my hippie phase, my hippie liberal phase. It's just, I just want to, looking at the picture, I want to shave. I mean, it's been 40 years and I want to shave that nastiness off. It's just horrible, horrible. And this is our group when we were making movies in high school. And this was the group of us that were making films back then. We called ourselves Free Whip because it was Fritz, who's my best friend, front and center there. Lee, who's in the middle back. Whittle, which is me on the far right-hand corner, if you can believe it. I must have weighed 120 pounds there. And then Steve Stipp, who's got his arms crossed. Yeah, wow. But we had a lot of fun. We really did. And learned how to make movies there, too. Really just learned how to do it. It's amazing how you can read all the books you want to, but until you get out there and make mistakes and stuff and find out what you don't have, you never really learn until you do it. I like this picture very much. I'm not going to go through every picture I have. All right, I'm going to show you this. I've shown it once or twice before. It's just, you want to talk about courage. Well, this one's not the one. I'll save that one for later. There's one more picture of me and John Voight with my mom. That's a couple years before my mom's last trip out here, and she was much, much better off then. She really had a good time that night, and that was at the Reagan Library. And yeah, that's probably the last time. This picture was the last time I saw my mom, when my mom was like all the way there. So I'm really glad she got a chance to do it. I got a chance to speak that night, which was great. So that was very cool. Here's the picture that I always hesitate to show just because it's just, this is how, look, this is how I felt I looked. This is how I felt I look all the time. And in fact, I felt like I looked like this until I turned 50 or 48 or something. This would be my junior year picture. My God, that is just sad. Come on. It really is. It's like Lord God, King of the geeks. Although I must say, looking back on it, I don't have the same kind of burning hatred that I had for it before. But that's definitely me. Had those big round teeth, and my buddies at the planetarium used to call me termite. They're better now. Termite. I hated it at the time. I think really, looking back on it, I think it's very cool now. I think that's it. Just checking almost at the end of the scroll here and see if I missed anything. Oh, yeah, there's one picture I wanted to show. This is one of my favorite guys in the world. This is Mike Schlitz. Now, I said all this was going to be post-eject, but I'm going to make an exception in this case. I was on a jet, and I was flying Mike Schlitz to the first event for the Veterans Airlift Command. Mike is an Army Ranger. He was leading his patrol back. He was a sergeant, leading his patrol back on a trip through Baghdad, and he was going to be in the up-armored truck, but he had some new guys, so he put the new guys in the up-armored truck, and he took a regular unarmored Humvee, and they drove over 120 millimeter or 122 millimeter, two of them fused together, improvised explosive device, and it was fueled with liquid propane. And Mike went sailing through the air about 200 feet, and he sits up, and he can see the Humvee is burning. And so he gets up to run to his guys, and what Mike didn't realize, because he was so focused on his men, he didn't realize that he was completely coated in liquid propane, and he was just a little torch, just a little Schlitz torch. And he was running back to his guys, and he got there, and the two or three other guys in the Humvee were all killed. And then he passed out. Mike was in a medically induced coma for 6 weeks, something like that. You can't really get a very good look at it here, but his ears were both burned off. His nose was burned off. His eyelids are burned off, and his lips were burned off. And his head looked like a bowling ball covered in scar tissue. And I remember when I first got into this plane and I first started looking at him, I remember the only thought I can remember about this moment, and it was very clear, I'll just go back to me for this just for a second, was that I remember when I was sitting there with Mike, I just remember thinking, look him in the eye and keep looking him in the eye. Don't avert your eyes, just look at the guy. So I got to be friends with Mike, and when Mike woke up out of the coma, needless to say, he pretty much didn't want to live anymore. Both of his hands were burned off, so you can see he's got 2 artificial arms there. And he was really ready to give up. But then his unit was going to be rotated back to the States, and he decided he wanted to be there when his Ranger unit came home. So that gave him something to live for. And Veterans Airlift Command is run by a really great guy named Walt Fricke, and he basically takes private jets and things and flies veterans anywhere they want to go, wounded vets, anywhere they want to go. They want to go to Disney World? Great. They want to bring their families in from wherever they are? Great. And there's 3,000 pilots, and everybody's lining up waiting for a mission. So we were taking Mike to a fundraiser. It's the first time I met him. And Mike wanted to see his unit come back. So he had something to live for. So it came time for his unit to rotate back from Iraq, and they tried to get him to the Air Force Base, but he couldn't sit in any of these jets. He couldn't fly commercial. He couldn't sit in one of these airplanes. He was in his bed, and he couldn't really get out of it. And it was a big, heavy medical bed because there's all this life support stuff on it. It wasn't like it was a cot or a stretcher or anything. So Veterans Airlift Command found a Pilatus, which has a cargo door. And the people who worked at the FBO, the people who fueled the guy's airplane, came in on a weekend and built a ramp on their own time. Built a wooden ramp to wheel him up into the cargo side of this single-engine turboprop Pilatus. And then on the other end, at the Air Force Base, they had built, his unit had built another ramp. And when they landed, and it was time to get Mike out of the plane, it was snowing and a little bit of rain, and he couldn't get, he had no skin. I mean, he had no epidermis. So he couldn't get wet, and he got cold very easily. So when it came time to get him out of his plane, his entire unit gathered around him and formed like a moving umbrella. And they basically linked arms over him and kept him warm and dry, and they wheeled him in there. And when he got in there, the crowd went crazy, and he got needless to say, a standing ovation. And since then, he's been an advocate. Now, the great thing about Mike, and this is the only way to treat people like this, I think, and that is to give them a ration of crap. You can't treat them, you cannot treat people like this with kid gloves. I did a fundraiser with him many years later, and I said, some of you may be tempted to feel sorry for Mike, but that's not Mike Schlitz. Mike Schlitz is a ass-kicking Army Ranger, and he will kick your ass, kick my ass too, because that guy's still in there. But Mike, this was before, I don't know how many surgeries he's had by this point, probably 60. But he has had another 20 or 30 since then. His nose has been utterly reconstructed. To give you an idea of the difference between why I'm so hard on Hollywood and why I'm so worshipful of people in the military, is this reason here. Mike looked like this. Somebody from the movie casting business heard about his story, called him, asked him if he wanted to be in a movie about Iraq. He said yes. And he went and got his nose reconstructed out of skin that was growing. They grew some skin on him somewhere, some of his own skin, cut it off, made a nose out of it. He showed up on the movie set, and they started yelling at him because they wanted him to look like this. They wanted a guy who, looked like he was a bomb victim. They didn't want a guy who was, recovering and had a nose and everything. I hear that story. I just want to firebomb Hollywood. I just want to. It's one thing to have to think that, but just to say that to a guy, what kind of person are you? Who could say such a thing to this guy? So Mike went through a bunch of reconstructive surgeries, and I heard he was in town once, this be several years ago, and he was they were having dinner at a hotel, at a restaurant in Beverly Hills, and I went down to see him. And I walked in the door, and I'm looking around for him, and I can't find him. And I realize his back's to the door, but, guy had a nose and ears and everything. And sat down, and I said, Mike, you grew your ears back. He said, yep, I just got fitted with them, prosthetic ears. And I said, just out of curiosity, why did you pick 6-year-old girls' ear, Mike's? Couldn't have picked a man's ear? This ear looks like the kind of ear you'd see on a cartoon princess. And he laughed. He said he'd been without ears for years. And he said when he went to test fit the prosthetic ears, he said normal size ears he said it just looked like Dumbo. I just couldn't believe that they belonged on my head. So he eventually got a couple of different sets. He's got 2 hooks for arms, motorized hooks. And one of these times we were together, probably that night, I said, hey, man, you going to be at this thing or not? And he says, I don't know. Maybe I can find somebody to read my palm. And, that's the attitude that just makes everything I do and makes everything this country is about, makes it work. And I just couldn't be prouder of the guy. I really just admire him enormously. He's a real, honest-to-God hero, and he's my hero. And I don't know how he does it, but I sure am glad he did. He's just a good man, and I'm proud to be on the same team as him. My dad, I know I'm going all over the place, just kind of taking the pictures in order that I found them. My dad was the manager of the Sonesta Beach Hotel. We actually went to Bermuda, then we went to Florida, then we went back to Bermuda, then came back to Florida. I usually don't get into that because it's too messy. But when we went back to Bermuda for about 7, 8 months, my dad opened up the Southampton Princess Hotel, which is here. So this was the second hotel, and you know, I mean, I'm not trying to brag. I'm as completely blown away by it as anyone else, but that's how I grew up. You know, I grew up on those beaches. Let's see, it's almost impossible to believe, but that's it. That's how I grew up. Here's the hotel. This is a hotel I really grew up in. This is the first hotel. Yeah, you can tell the difference between the one behind it, which is you know, looks like 4K digital camera, and this one is Ektachrome or something. But the hotel on the left was the one that is just still the one in my heart, and it's just nothing but a big old grassy peninsula now. Just a couple more to go. Then we'll go back to questions here. I can tell you a little bit about the whole family relationship thing. Yeah, these are all cool. It's my dad. Second Lieutenant, United States Army. He got to Germany in April of '45. He got there about a week before the war ended. He was an intelligence officer, and he told me very, very late in his life that he was one of the guys who was there for the Nuremberg trials, and he was standing underneath the scaffolds with a stopwatch. He was 22 or 23 years old, and they dropped the rope on, they executed, I don't know, 30 or 40 of these guys, the worst of them. And he would just sit there and go tick, 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 and wait until, you know, stop moving. Then the doctor would go in and check for the heartbeat. And that's the kind of job that you got when you were 20 back in those days. A little different today. He's a serious looking guy, though. That's the kind of guy that won the war. This is my family. Me in the background, brother Steve, Evan, and Melanie. Just dressed up. You know, when you're the manager's son, you got to be down there a bunch, and so we were at the hotel quite a bit, and we'd have parties at the house, and we would go around and serve like hors d'oeuvres and things like that. And we were just part of the team. One of my all-time favorite pictures ever. That's my dad at his hotel in Bermuda with Jonathan Winters. And Jonathan Winters was a regular guest, and I remember seeing him and even then being impressed by just the kind of faces he was making. I didn't know much about him, but I just love that picture, just love it. And yeah, so here's another one from the hotel. And this is probably the most meta picture of us, I guess. This is all of us. I think it's the only one we've seen that's all of us. So that's the fams. For those of you that were asking, that's me behind my mom. My mom with my sister Melanie on her knee, and Steve between my dad and my mom, and Evan on the other side. So that's the childhood. Is there anything here that absolutely positively has to be shown? I don't think so. Last, almost last, second last. I don't think so. Oh, just for fun, this is a picture of me with Kelty Williams. He was he's the guy who played Bubba in Forrest Gump. Although you wouldn't know it to see him. The whole thing, no prosthetics, nothing. He just stuck his lip out and did it. And that was cool. That was very cool. Checking, almost done. Oh, hey, hang on. Got a couple more. Got a whole section here. And then I swear to God, I'll get back to the questions. But I guess that's kind of what it's all about. So I have this picture. It's the only picture of my family that I actually have. It's on my desk in my home office. These are my 4 favorite people in the world back then, and there's only one of them still with us, and she's barely still with us. So that's my dad and my mom, my Aunt Marty, and my Uncle Rock. And I just absolutely loved Marty and Rock, and I loved all of their kids. They were the cousins that we hang out with, so they would come once a year down to the hotel in Bermuda and hang out for 2 weeks. Then we'd go back and visit them in Pennsylvania for 2 weeks. Marty was a championship swimmer. Rock was Uncle Rock. It doesn't get any better than that. I pity people that don't have an uncle named Rock. Uncle Rock was a Marine artillery spotter in the back of airplanes, and that's how I remember Mom and Dad and Marty and Rock, and it's just great. There's another picture I love very much, very much. This is my dad on a business trip to New York. So he, my dad grew up in Pennsylvania, so he's used to snow. It's not like snow is a big surprise to him. And he, nevertheless, when he became the manager of that hotel in Bermuda, he took it real seriously. And so this is him on a business trip into New York, probably around 1966 or so, somewhere in that general ballpark. And I just love it. I love it. It's him on a sales trip, and it reminds me of actually a really great story. See you later, Marty and Rock. I'll see you soon, I guess. It's not real soon, but eventually. So here's my dad in New York City, and he's on a sales trip. Yeah, there you go. And he's wearing the Bermuda shorts, and he's wearing the Bermuda blazer that's the crest of Bermuda on the jacket. So here's a story that my mom, she only told me reluctantly. She never said a bad word about my dad to me that I'm ever aware of, but she said it was one of these business trips. They were in New York. And that's, practically positive that's the plaza in the background. So one of those windows just up out of frame was where I watched the moon landing. And so my dad used to do this. It's kind of affected, but he liked it, thought it was cool. So it's the national dress of Bermuda. It's the official dress of Bermuda. So my mom tells this story. My mom and my dad go out to a restaurant, real nice restaurant. I forget what it was, 21 Club, something like that. And they stop him at the door. You couldn't get into a restaurant without a jacket and tie back then. He's dressed exactly like this in this picture. They stop him at the door. He says, "Why are you stopping me?" And they said, "Well, I'm sorry, sir. We don't allow shorts in here." He says, "This is the national uniform of the country that I work in. This is the official dress of the country that I work in. I'm sorry, sir. We just can't do it." And he argued with them and argued with them and argued with them, and then he got so angry. My wife is just the only person who really understands this is Natasha, because of the part when I get to, and then he got so angry. That's something my beautiful wife can certainly relate to. So here's what my dad did. He got so angry. This is obviously way before the internet. He got so angry that he kind of stormed out of the front of the restaurant, grabbed my mom by the arm, got a cab, and drove around New York City for something like 2.5, 3 hours. And what he was looking for, without any kind of an aid or anything, but he was ready to pay some insane amount of money, like 100, $200, huge money back then. He drove around New York City trying to find a Scotsman in a kilt, because if he could find a Scotsman in a kilt, he was going to take that Scotsman back to the restaurant, stay out of the way on the corner, let that guy go in with the kilt, and then he would have had his victory. Then he would have been able to just come in and just aha. He's a bit of a nut, my dad. Like this picture a lot too. Just another beach picture, but I just like it. That's my childhood. For those of you who want to know, I was out on the beach every day, every single day. That's me munching on a hot dog surrounded by my bitches. And that's my brother Steve there. Something's going on off camera, but I'm not busy looking. I'm looking my own way as usual. Yeah, that was sitting on a beach eating hot dogs, and he never did find a Scotsman, by the way. My mom said it was unbearable. It was an unbearable 3 hours. My mom and Natasha would have a lot to talk about because I get that way. Yeah, I know I'm not going to show all these pictures. Showing every picture I have. I don't care. This is what this show's about. Here's a picture that's actually very, very cool. Right around the same time. Come on. Okay, so I got to tell you the story behind this. So I started scuba diving when I was probably 6 or 7, something like that. But this is helmet diving. So, so here's the thing. There was a guy who had a helmet diving concession. You can see these helmets are homemade. He basically just took 4 panes of glass and just basically welded them together, put them under a steel thing, ran a hose up to them, and then they're heavy. And so you're basically in this self-contained little bubble of air. And we weren't very deep. We were maybe 10, 12 feet, but we're feeding all of the sergeant major fishes and stuff like that. And the best part about it was this guy used to love, you can see my shoulders are so narrow, it's practically slipping down, it's almost around my waist. But it was great. We weren't very deep. And honestly, I've been diving quite a lot when I was a kid. And I, to this day, have never had a better underwater experience than that. It's just amazing. It's just an amazing experience. You're in there, you're absolutely dry, your head's dry, and all of these fish just running around right outside your nose there. Anyway, the reason this was great was because the guy who had the concession would come down to the hotel once a week, and he'd come to the hotel once a week and try to drum up business. He'd have like a little movie show and stuff, and we were in the movies. And then, towards the end of it or whatever, he'd say, "And now I'd like to bring a couple of our regular customers up. Billy and Stevie, you want to come up here?" And we'd be sitting there drinking our Shirley Temples, and having a great time. This little pin spot above the tables in the cocktail lounge, and we'd go up on the stage, and the guy would say, "So, Billy, did you have a good time?" "Oh, it was great." And we were, 4 or 5 years old, 5 or 6. And his basic point was, these guys can do it. It's completely safe. As far as I'm concerned, we were experimental test monkeys and unpaid at that, but nevertheless, the beat goes on. Here's a picture of me. Taken by a guy named Andy Hollebeck. You can see the wingtip on the right. It's taken from a twin-engine Globe. I'm flying that airplane. I remember that day. That was the day I talked about. I've talked about that day many times when I was flying between the cloud layers and the sunset over the Pacific, and I was like, oh my God, I can die now. I've done this. But I like that picture because it gives you an idea of just how small that thing is and how alone you are. In a good way and in kind of a scary way. I mean, those things would just get into a lift and you just go up like you're riding an elevator. Let's see. All right. Here's 80s Bill. I like this picture. This is actually from a contact sheet, so this is going to not be a very big picture. but I'll blow it up enough for us to be able to decode it. Come on. Yeah. I love this picture. It's probably my favorite picture of me, honestly. It was taken in the 80s. Yeah, could never tell, huh? So that'd be 30 years ago, something like that. 87, 88, 89. And it had these huge shoulder pads, double-breasted, had a pair of black pants with a zipper that ran down the outside of the leg. I had a white satin shirt, and I had a white, shiny white silk tie, and just out of frame below that was some Japanese characters, and I don't know what they meant. They probably meant, this guy's an idiot. But that was me when I was working in my nightclub days, and I actually had a lot of fun working in a nightclub. I did that for 3-4 years, maybe. Yeah, that was fun. I had a really good time. I was doing the light show, and I was up there in the DJ booth with the DJ, and it was the hottest club in Miami, and we didn't even open the doors till 10:30, 11. Nobody. If you were in there before midnight, you just forget it. We'd start to get going right around 12:30, and certainly by 1:45 we'd be in full on thing, and then we'd go till 5 or 6 in the morning every day. I loved it. I really did. I loved it. Here's the last picture of me at the beach, but it's a really good picture. This is a friend, not really a close friend either, named Jonathan Farrow. All I remember about Jonathan Farrow is that I knew his father, and then his father got into a real bad car accident, and he became he was essentially almost like a vegetable after that. I just remember seeing a big scar on his head, and he didn't talk or laugh anymore. But that's the hotel, that's the bay, that's me, and that's my universe. That's the world that I grew up in. And I got one last one here. Yep, it was an amazing life, and I can't begin to tell you how lucky I am, and how constantly aware of how lucky I am. But of all the pictures I've got, I think this one's probably my favorite. I think. I'm married to this person. If you'd asked a guy who was around 10 years ago this would ever happen, he would have, I would have just laughed at you. And that cat, by the way, is named Masyanya, and Natasha and that cat were together for 22 years. And that cat is very, very special. It's a very, very special girl, and I miss her, and Natasha misses her terribly, and yeah. So I think that's about it. That's certainly going to do it for now anyway. Oh, hold on. Last one. Sorry, honey. I'll keep yours up there. Here is, I met one of these guys just a couple days ago. This is from the first speaking event I ever did. I want to say it was 2003 or 4. And I did it in a coffee shop in Pasadena. And I was doing eject. And I had some people, some agent came to me and said, you should be doing this live. And I thought, there's no way I can speak live in front of people. How will I know what to say? But we went to a coffee shop in Pasadena, and I just talked for hours, and it turned out okay. So yeah, I got one more. This is the last one more. Russ. Oh, Russ is watching. Russ, I didn't know you were there. Russ was there. I spoke to Russ on the phone. Is that you with the goatee, Russ? We wait now for the delay, but there's somebody watching the show live who was actually there, and And I spoke to him on the phone just a couple days ago. Yeah. So this, I'm just going to end on this one because it's kind of a happy picture. My mom, just my grandfather in the Royal Navy and all of that stuff. But this picture was from 2005. We were on the ferry out to Catalina, and I love this picture. My mom was fully here for this trip, and she's normally just very friendly, and got such a big smile on her face. But that's like the Royal Navy Whittles there, that's my mom looks like Nelson, and I'm just like in the back, like almost like photobombing the picture. So we went to Catalina Island and we had a great time. So things happen and people get sick and people get older, and that's the way it goes. But anyway, that's that. So thanks for the little walk down memory lane. We'll take a couple more questions, at least a couple more. It's already 8 o'clock, but people said they want. I'm so tempted. I think I will leave that up. I'm just gonna leave that there because I like looking at it. Hang on. God, so I just got to get them organized. Hang on there. It just occurred to me to do one more of the one mores. Almost there. It's worth showing. It's worth finding. I just love it so much. Yep. Natasha came out to visit for 10 days, and I proposed to her on day 9, and this is when she came out on the trip before she went home to move out here permanently. But I just took this picture in my studio. I just adore it. I was like, okay, I'm done. Wow. That's my girl. Hey, baby. I'm a very, very lucky guy. And I got to tell you, too, I've been through a lot of crap as well. So we can talk about that some more. Maybe we'll do part 2 next week and kind of talk some more about some of the other stuff, because it was nothing. There's a lot of rough times in there, and I just kind of showed you the highlight of pretty much the highlights of the life, but there were some pretty low lights too. So where are we? Okay. Back to questions. We'll do a few more questions. Thanks for staying with me there for that hour tour or whatever. So back to Steve's question, just to answer, because I never did. I just talked for an hour and a half. Tell us about your family dynamic growing up, specifically with your siblings. Were you the middle child? Who was the brat? Who was mom's favorite? Who was your favorite? Who got in the most trouble? That sort of thing. I was the oldest, and I still am, I might point out, which has really given me kind of that Boy Scout first son. I think I remember reading in the, I mentioned in the Apollo 11 thing, I remember that they said about all of the Mercury 7 astronauts, they're all either only child or eldest son. And most of them were eldest son in big families. So there's something about that. That family dynamics really do matter a lot. So I was always kind of the straight shooter because, I got all the discipline and all the attention and all the rest of it. My brother Steve, who's a year younger than me, was one of 2 middle children, and Steve was always the one getting into trouble on purpose most of the time. It couldn't be more different. I would be working in the Miami Planetarium in air-conditioned comfort. I'm so pale, I'm practically blue, and and I'm going out to the Everglades at nighttime for star parties, and my brother Steve at 14 or 15. This is how parents were back then. My brother Steve, and that's how society was back then. He would take his dog, a shotgun, and some food, and go out into the Everglades for 2 or 3 days. And Mom said, just let me know you're coming back on Sunday night. He just went out there with a tent, just went out into the middle of the Everglades with his dog and his shotgun, and just stayed out there. I was so impressed by that, really, really impressed by that. But that was not really me. Evan played football when he was in high school, and I think a little bit in college. And my sister Melanie, I'm closest to of the bunch. I see a fair amount of Steve. I used to see him more often than I do now. He moved away, and then he moved back to Florida, I think. But my sister is the one I'm closest to, just emotionally. And my sister is the soldier. She's just been there for Mom the whole time, and she's just been amazing, absolutely amazing. So let's see.